Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Firefighters Chalkboard. This is your host, Uncle Wayne, and for episode number 18, we've got Assistant Chief Ian Schulte from Pooler, Georgia Fire Department. Chief, I want to first say thank you for being on the podcast with me. I'm really excited to have you here, and I'm sure we're going to have tons of good stuff to talk about. So let's just start it off right off the get go. Tell everybody about yourself and how you got started in the fire service.
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you very much for having me here. I know you go by Uncle Wayne, but in token of brotherly love and esteem, I'm going to call you Brother Wayne.
That'll work.
Um, so with me, my name's Ian Schulte. Been in and around the fire service my entire life. My parents love to joke and say that I was actually conceived on the back of a fire engine, so I was day zero involved in the fire service. Officially, I started on my 18th birthday in 2007 in my first Firefighter One Academy, where I was a volunteer working to become an intern firefighter for the Point Pleasant Fire Protection District in Boone County, Kentucky. There, I went through school, got my Fire One, Fire Two, EMT, and was working on completing my associate's degree when I was hired by the Burlington Fire Protection District at the end of 2009. So I went career in 2009, 2010. In 2010, I became an instructor, and the reason why I became an instructor was to help others get ready for their IFSAC testing and Pro Board testing. I wanted to have a credential to better help enable me to, I don't know, understand and impart knowledge on others. From there, I began to teach fairly regularly as an adjunct in the Regional Firefighter One Academy from 2011 to 2012, and I've taught at the company level as an academy adjunct from that point in time till 2020 with all the organizations that I had worked for, whether it was in Georgia, North Dakota, or in Northern Kentucky. In 2020, I got hurt at a class called Firefighters Laboring and Mastering Essential Skills. From there, I was put on day work, and they didn't really know what to do with me. Since I had some experience in training and as an instructor, I was actually put in charge of the department's recruit class, and I was put in charge of the department's recruit class for a couple of years. I went back to the floor for about a year on the ladder company, and then from there, I was brought back upstairs to assist with recruit schools, and in 2023, I became the training chief in October. So that is a rather abridged version of my involvement as an instructor.
Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot to accomplish in a truly in the world of the fire service a short amount of time. I mean, good job. So we're going to start off with a bang. So let's talk about this signature backwards ball cap. I'm representing tonight, but tell us the story about the ball cap.
So I got to tell you that I appreciate it, and to this day, almost once a week, sometimes multiple times a week, I'll still get pictures on Facebook Messenger on my cell phone of guys just sending me pictures of them in their backwards hats. And if I can snag a picture of this at some point, it'll wind up into one of my PowerPoints, specifically in my lecture, Backwards Hats and Forwards Leadership. So the story behind this is that in my last recruit class, class 2402, we were doing a structured written survival course. We do a 3-day writ survival course. It's at the very end of recruit class. They're tired, they're worn out, and it's 3 days of PT, writ survival drills, punishment PT, and everything. It's meant to be one of the last things that they will go through in our training program is getting towards their pinnacle exercise. And when I'm out there, I personally try and oversee this with one of my senior captains. And I'm a big believer in leading by example. So I'm out there and I'm going through every drill, every exercise with the recruits. They're in gear, I'm in gear. The only time that I'm not necessarily wearing full PPE is when I'm trying to command the particular incident, and also I still have some residual pain in my neck from the injury that I got at Flames, so I may not always necessarily be wearing my helmet. I'll be in some form of head covering, but I always, if I'm wearing my hat on the drill yard, I'm wearing my hat backwards. So there were some pictures that were taken of me and my senior captain. We wear our hat backwards on the drill yard. The reason why I wear my hat backwards is because whether I'm on the drill yard or I'm in the station, if I'm going to wear my hat, I'm going to wear it backwards because it symbolizes equality. To me, the level is the number one tool that we're taught as Masons, that we are all equal as men. And if I'm in the station, I'm wearing all my hardware because 4 out of 5 days a week, I'm wearing a crisp button down, all my hardware and everything. I look very formal, and I don't want to be that unapproachable. So if I'm wearing a hat that day, if I'm in the station, I'm gonna be wearing it backwards, so that way I'm more of one of the guys as much as I can be.
Sure.
Well, anyways, these pictures were put on Facebook, and it was shared back home in Kentucky by one of my friends. And I was just going through, scrolling through, taking a look at some of the comments, and there was a battalion chief from a department that I know of back home. I have some friends who have worked for that organization. Um, and it was a battalion chief who had stated that if one of his instructors showed up with his hat on backwards, he, as the battalion chief, would put that instructor in the class, or better yet, he would send them home. Now, he might have been talking about his own organization, but he's firing a shot across the bow at an organization that he doesn't know, an organization where he doesn't know the people. And I'll be honest, I don't see a lot of chiefs out there in turnout gear. I don't see a lot of chiefs out there leading from the front. I don't see a lot of chiefs that are going to recruit classes and going pound for pound with their recruits, much less trying to go pound for pound with their employees. And so I won't lie, I took that a little personally, probably a little more personally than I needed to, temperance not being one of my strongest of virtues. I fired back at him, and we had an exchange between myself, him, some of my friends, some of his subordinate employees, and we'll just say that that wound up going by the wayside. My chief watched the entire thing unfold. He actually thought it was hilarious more than anything else.
Because
And
your chief knows the work you're putting in.
yeah, my chief's a good guy. He's a fireman first and foremost. So um, it's not that big. It wasn't that big of a deal to him. I wasn't being. I might have been somewhat disrespectful, but I wasn't outright inappropriate in the statements that I made. Um, I posited a lot of things for thought. And the other day, I was still, or the day after, I was still really heated up over it. I was still really upset, and I just made a Facebook post. Facebook post with one of the pictures that was taken by um, my training coordinator, my recruit class coordinator, Jackie Howe. You actually met him
Yep.
at MAFC. He took that picture of me out there with my air pack over my head, with that smile on my face, while all my recruits are just staring into the ground in misery. Um, and I made a post that basically called out that disconnect in leadership that we have in the fire service today. It was me venting into the atmosphere. It's all that it was. And me venting into the atmosphere wound up becoming basically a social media firestorm, as far as I could tell, on my behalf. And so with that, it was shared all over the place. It was shared by County Fire Tactics. It was shared by Chief Rhodes, and it was shared by firefighters all across the country. And it's still being shared today. I mean, I still get multiple friend requests a week from some person that I've never heard of, and I'll go in and look on their Facebook page, and I'll see that they shared this post that I made from months ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've had an impact, whether it was intentional or not.
I believe it was a positive one. It's a eye-opening experience a lot of times, and you know, I can tell you, funny story, guys. I caught the signature cap firsthand. I met Ian at a Fools Bash in Atlanta. We were at MAFC at the conference, and I'm looking to the side, and all I can see is this guy eyeing me down. I'm trying to say, I don't know who he is, but he's staring me down. So he walks right up to me from the crowd, and the first thing he did was he put his hand out, introduced himself, and we've been chatting ever since. And it's he calls me brother to start off with. Both of us are Masons and stuff, and he eyed me down from 40 feet away. I mean, come up, introduced himself, and I've been picking up a lot of stuff from him. I'm hoping he can have the chance for me to show him a little bit of stuff, and um, another thing I want to throw into it, and I'll do it across the WW here. I want to let you know and everybody else know that you got some really, really good guys working for you. I had a few of your instructors inside my class, and whenever we were teaching in MAFC, and man, they were so active and energetic. It was like they couldn't get enough of what we were talking about. And, they weren't scared to show some of the flaws they had. And it really helped the class open up. It made discussion better. It made it a truly open topic like we wanted. And your guys broke the ice for it, and they were just heavy hitting the whole time. I mean, I'm telling you, you need to be proud of them. I mean, they're some great guys.
I got to tell you, I'm eternally proud of those guys. Well, of all the guys that work for me, but those two in particular, those were my recruit instructors in the last recruit class. I can say that both of them have come a long way in the time that I've known them, and especially with Jackie in the time that he's worked for me. Jackie was that 20-year guy who was checked out, and when he came to work with me, I'm not afraid to share this because I sing his praises to him about this all the time at work, and while simultaneously breaking his balls. He was the guy who was checked out. He was the guy who he was trying to get a Monday through Friday job so that we could be at home at night with his wife and his kid. And he was kind of over it. And coming in and working with me, whether it was me directly or it was just other factors, he's bought into the mission. He's bought into the job, and he's been reinvigorated. He understands, and I'm hoping that it's a little bit of my leadership and the way that I carry myself that has been imparted into him. I'm a big believer that anytime I make a mistake, I own it. If nobody's saying anything, it's my job to step up, and it's my job to say something. It's my job to break the ice. It is our responsibility as instructors, as leaders, to step up to the plate when other people aren't. And I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to make myself look like an idiot. That's why I'm willing to come on podcasts. That's why I'm willing to go out and teach at MAFC, whether I'm wearing a pair of silkies and 3/4 boots, getting beat up by some dude on the backside of a building. It, it's all to try and make the job better and the people around me better. And if a little bit of that rubbed off on my guys, the only thing that I can do is just say that I'm proud because they're making a positive impression on the world around me. And the reason why I was able to spot you from 40 feet away is because I was able to see your ring from a distance. I have 20/20 vision.
Those days, age is coming; it'll go away. Uh, but I really love what you just said a second ago. You were talking about, you said the dreaded four-letter word, but it's not dreaded in what we do. In the world of instruction, fail is not bad. Fail. Fire department, we love acronyms so much. Fail, first attempt in learning. That's what I really love to say. And I write it on the board right when we start a new recruit class, guys. First attempt in learning is what fail truly means. The training ground is the place to have unlimited, unrepeatable mistakes. It's where you need to mess up and learn from your mistakes and get better so we don't mess up whenever you go outside of the drill yard. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that, and I fail on a daily basis too. But no different than what you're doing. I'll be the first one to say my boss has that same thing. He's building that culture where it's okay to lean on each other. It's okay to mess up. We get up, we're stronger from the next time around. Is and building that family atmosphere whenever the mission is the recruits. And when you got buy-in from all your people like that, and everybody's driven for the mission, it's a win. It's unstoppable, and you're going to get better and better recruits from it.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And that's why I'm such a big believer in failing. Is it something that we should strive to do? But not necessarily. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to take the risk, if you're not willing to take the chance, you're never going to achieve your maximum potential as a person. And you know what? I'm just a person who's chosen to fail more than some of the other people who are around me. And I was talking with one of my guys today, and I told him that the type of person that I am today, uh, because he was talking about how much job knowledge I have, and I said, man, the reason why I have the level of knowledge that I do is because I have been in situations where I've come up short. Specifically talking about, like he said, so much about ground ladders. Well, the reason why I know so much about ground ladders is because one day back in like 2013, 2012, I was carrying a ground ladder up and I couldn't figure out why this ladder was super heavy. I mean, it was just a ground ladder. Well, I didn't realize that it was an alkalite ground ladder when everything else that I was used to was a duo safety. These are things that I didn't know at the time. And when I couldn't rationalize why this ladder felt one and a half to two times as heavy. Well, it's because it was. It's because it was, and because I didn't know that information. So when I figured that out, I felt like an idiot. So I went down the rabbit hole to try and learn as much as I could about the difference between duo safety and alkalite ladders. When I started learning about forcible entry, part of the reason why I learned as much as I did about forcible entry is because when I took FDNY's test back in 2012, and I obviously didn't get hired by the FDNY, I stayed at ladder 114 and engine 201 Battalion 40's house. One of my friends, good mentor of mine, wound up having a connection that I was able to stay in one of their stations for a couple days back at that time. One of the guys from ladder 114 took me down in the basement to their forcible entry prop, and he said, "All right, kid, take me through everything you know about forcible entry." I was there for a couple days, and he just wanted to invest a little bit in me. So I went through everything that I knew about forcible entry. Well, this dirty ghetto fireman from, Brooklyn sat here and taught me about bevel in, bevel out, mechanical advantage, gap set force, sizing up the doors and everything. And it's these experiences where I personally felt like I was coming up short, where I didn't have that knowledge. I went back afterwards and I learned as much as I could about everything. So for me, if somebody views me as a wealth of knowledge, it's because I've put myself into situations where I've come out looking like an absolute idiot. So I went on the back end and learned as much as I could. And I've just drilled and reinforced it to the point where I can memorize all these different things. It's not just because I look at something and it's automatically there. It's from repetition,
Yeah,
drilling it into my mind, reading it over and over again.
yeah, it takes work. It takes a lot of work, a
It's
lot of
all that it
investment.
is.
And you talking about alkalites? We pick around here and call them alco heavies, but the thing of it is, they're made 30 minutes from where we are. And we actually take a lot of times whenever we do outside field trips with the recruits, we'll take them by the ladder factory and actually let them watch them build the ladders and stuff. I mean, they are a little heavier. We use them. We have both. We've got alkalites and we got duos, but a lot of times we tend to get alkalites more just because of the deal of servicing. I mean, when the place that makes them 30 minutes away, it's and they can actually repair rungs really quickly and stuff like that instead of having to get them cut out and rewelded and stuff. I mean, but it if you get used to throwing alkalites, it makes throwing the duo that much easier. I'll say that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Just because they're closer doesn't mean that I'm still not going to pick a duo when and where I can.
Yeah.
But that's a personal opinion, right? And I can't blame you for you guys in that situation.
Well, I
It's a
mean,
no-brainer.
it's not me making the calls on it. I mean, but it's honestly, I never touched a duo until probably 10 years ago. I'd always had nothing but alkalites until we started getting some duos. When we changed over and started getting Pierces, we started getting some duos with them, and it was like, whoa, these things are light. Um, but so talking about you, you do so much more than just act as a chief role in your fire department. Tell us about some of the other teaching that you do. You do a lot of conference stuff. You travel around with a lot of people and expose yourself to stuff. Tell us about some of the stuff. I mean, like what you were doing last week. You were lashing ladders and stuff on the chances of scenarios that might never happen, but when they do happen, you got to be prepared for it.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I like to consider myself the village bicycle of the American Fire Service. Like, I'm willing to be the guy who goes anywhere. If you give me a place to sleep and you give me a sandwich, I'll be the guy who's there. I don't do it for the money. Um, I love the job, and I'm invested, and I love teaching, I love networking, I love learning. I mean, I love being a student as much as I love being the guy. Actually, I probably love being a student even more because then you don't wind up as the center of attention. But regardless, I'm very involved in the fire service as much as I can be. Um, I was given my first chance to teach at a conference by a man named Chris Gilpin. He is a captain with the Union Township Fire Department in Union Township, Ohio. Um, he's the boss man at Oath Keepers Fire Conference.
Okay.
I've known him since 2013 when the Queen City Fools was founded, when I was still living in Northern Kentucky, just outside Cincinnati. And I'll tell you, I'd follow that dude to the gates of hell and back, especially the first lecture that I ever heard him give. It was called Heavy Lies the Crown, where he basically talked about young firefighters who are college educated, who are put into leadership positions. And he was talking about everything that I was. Um, but I believed him. And because what he was saying was true, all the difficulties and all the headaches and all the heartaches that I was going through was predominantly due to my nonage as a firefighter, as a young guy. Um, with that, I mean, I was bought and sold on Chris from there on out. And with Oath Keepers, I wound up getting in a couple other opportunities. A few years ago, Chief Isaacson put a blurb out on one of the CFT pages that he was looking for people to come out and help. So he said, send him an email. I sent him an email that outlined basically my career outline. Chief Isaacson gave me a chance to be part of the CFT Green team. So between him and Todd Edwards, I've had the great pleasure of being able to not only assist as working logistics, but also be an adjunct instructor for a few stations. And this past February, Todd Edwards gave me a chance to run a search station with a few guys out of Gwinnett County, and Chief Rob Ramirez as well, along with Chief Dennis Riley. And between Chief Riley, Chief Ramirez, Todd Edwards, and those guys, like they really set me up for success, and I'm eternally grateful to them. So between that, I've taught at Oath Keepers, CFT events. I've taught at the Jay Muller training weekend. Jay was one of my boys who was unfortunately taken from us way too soon. And for the last 2 years, I've taught at MAFC with the Ethos of Fire and Black Flag Cadre. Other training events that I've taught at, I'm sort of an adjunct instructor for the Georgia Spartan program. I've had the great pleasure of being able to go back and teach with Basil Abraham at the OBT classes. I was at OBT 6 last. I wasn't able to be at 7. And I also teach locally for the Black Sheep Fools, which is our regional Fools chapter. And like I said, man, I'm not out here to make money. I've actually never made a dime teaching outside of what, you know, my community pays me for. I just enjoy going out and helping bring other people up.
It's fun. I mean, I'll be honest. MAFC was my first time venturing out. I've taught for years locally here and stuff like that, and it was my first time just sticking my neck out and going somewhere else. Man, I had a ball. I did. I mean, I was there nowhere near as long as I wanted to be because I mean we had a graduation come up and everything else. I had to hurry up and get back. But it was a ton of fun, a lot of people to network, and it was just a huge amount of like-minded individuals. They didn't care about nothing. They didn't care about nobody's ego. It was nothing. It's just get together. Let's learn. Let's train. Let's make ourselves better. And I mean, it was an environment I really enjoyed.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm with you. I wasn't able to be at MAFC as long as I wanted to be at. The day that you met me, I rolled in probably 4 hours before that to set up for the class that we were doing. And then the next day, when we finished up that class, I was back in my truck on my way back to Savannah because I had to proctor a Fire Officer 3 test the next day. So, I mean, it's turn and burn. My life is very busy. I mean, I even got a text message from my grandma today that says, "Hey, I see how fast you're moving in your life. You don't want to wind up like your old man, and we don't want to lose you too soon. Like, you need to slow down a little bit." And she's right. I live my life at 100 miles an hour, and eventually I'm going to wind up hitting the wall. My 24-inch gauge is a little screwed up. Uh, I don't do very good at my 8 hours worth of balance.
Yeah, I can relate between working in school and everything else, and trying to make a difference, and working on writing a book and everything else. I'm kind of wide open. I mean, uh, so let's get in your head for a couple of these next questions I got.
Absolutely.
In your opinion, what kind of mindset as well as skill set do you think you need to have to be what's considered a great instructor?
First and foremost, if you're going to be a great instructor, you need to be a constant student. You constantly need to be a student of the job, and as soon as you learn something, you need to find the next bit of information that you need to bite off to make yourself even better. This job's evolving at a rapid rate, and with it, we as instructors, we absolutely have to adapt. We have to be willing to accept new information, even if it's counterintuitive to what it is that we believe. Yes, we have to vet all the information that we're bringing in, but if we vet the information, we determine it to be valid, we have to adapt. Just because you don't like change doesn't mean that you do not need to accept change. This job is changing. UL, FSRI, FRSI, I can never get those letters in order. I do that all the time. they're putting out information for us to be able to digest. And with each and every study, we're understanding more about how the job is evolving. Things that we used to do 10, 15 years ago, like when I came in the job 17 years ago, the first new boss shows up, his entire job is to go around the house and break out every window. You can't do that shit anymore. Like, we have to accept that the things that we're doing can be just as counterproductive if we do not take in new information. And, you know, one of the principal things that I believe in, and again, I will stand here and say this is all stuff that I've heard spoken publicly. In the 31st degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, we are taught that we must be willing to defend the opinions that are in direct opposition to our own with the same veracity that we defend our own positions. Because we as people, as we take in information, as we go through life, as we go through its experiences, and as we learn more, we might wind up changing our stance. Being a constant student of the job and understanding that we don't know it all and that our beliefs could change in an instant is essential to wind up being essential as an instructor. So, as an instructor, not only do you have to be somewhat studious from the student perspective, constantly studying, constantly evolving, you also have to be able to actually go out and do the skills. You have to be able to go out and you have to be able to put your hands on ladders. You have to put your hands on tools. You have to be able to demonstrate. And that takes repetition. That means me getting out of the office, going down, throwing ground ladders. That means tying knots. That means doing basic firefighter one skills. I'm just because I'm a chief officer doesn't mean that I should not be capable of performing those skills. The underside of my helmet is painted black for a reason. I'm a firefighter first. I should be expected to do any of the basic tasks that those firefighters should do. They should be able to do it faster than me because that is part of their everyday job routine. But, you know, boss man should be able to come down and at least hang with the kids. In the last RIT survival class that I did with some of my guys, um, I was challenged by one of the students who said that um, he basically called me a liar, and there is nothing more in this world that will make me upset than when somebody calls me a liar. From there, I proceeded to get my personal protective equipment out, and I did a 2-minute drill in the same time frame that he did. I did it in a minute 5 seconds, and he did it in a minute and 28 seconds. I mean, don't call me a liar. I can hang just as well as you can. It is 17 years of experience versus your two. There's a lot of repetition that's gone into this. But taking in the constant studious nature and also combining with constant skill repetition, those are the things that wind up making good instructors because you have to be able to blend both worlds. You could be great in the classroom, but if you're not good out there in the drill yard, what value are you? You might be great on the drill yard, but if you don't have the ability to take the information from the classroom, you're limited in one way or another. The student will get their best return on investment from the instructor if that instructor is well versed in both worlds. I guess that's the easiest way to put it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love what you said about your helmet. Oh, I've been over here steady taking notes the whole time. You just keep rolling, dude. I'm telling you, I'm gonna fill a page up before it's over with. But I love what you said about your helmet, and it makes me think. Years ago, um, when I went from fireman to lieutenant, I painted my helmet, and somebody, you're gonna strip it. No, I'm just gonna paint over it. I just painted. We back then, firemen were yellow, lieutenants were black, captains were red, and I just got some black paint and just painted right over it. And they said, "You're not gonna strip it?" No. Why not? I said, when I bump my head, the yellow's going to show and remind me where I come from. And, to this day, it was, when it come time to make captain, the red went over to black. So that way, it looks like a kaleidoscope on the bottom end of it where it gets hit every now and then. But it's just really good as a constant reminder of no matter what, we still might have to put that gear on and go do the job. So we need to constantly be training at it. You know, Everybody can sit in the chair and do this real good. I mean,
I mean, the way that I put it is basically the last thing that I see before the white hat goes on is the black that sits underneath it. And it's a reminder that, to my core, I should, yes, I have to think like a chief officer, which I'm actually really terrible at from a command and control perspective. I 100% will always think like a company officer. I bypass the battalion chief role. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination. but I think like a company officer, and I think like a firefighter. And I have to remember that my perspective should always be best judgment for the men and for the public, not just for my own wants and my own desires.
I like what you said about keeping in the mindset because that brings me to the thought of us as instructors. We are the people that our students are looking up to and everything else, but a lot of times we got to look through the world through their eyes too. I mean, we kind of get the aspect of how are they looking at this? We were talking about that in class a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, how many of you actually stop just a second and think about what kind of culture shock are these kids going through whenever they're starting class? I mean, we're used to the routine of a recruit school. They may not be. I mean, very few people go from a regular setting to where it's kind of their own pace to getting slammed into a pumps one class in 40 hours you're taking a test. I mean, they're not used to that. And sometimes we need to look at things through their eyes and maybe tone it down a little bit. I'm not saying go easy on them by any way, shape, or form, but put a little more empathy into it and look at it through their eyes.
No, you're absolutely right. And that was one of the things that was very difficult for me at a young age to rationalize. I mean, I grew up in the firehouse. My old man was a fire chief. I mean, my old man would come in at 2 o'clock in the morning and say that the house was on fire and to get out, and then made me, do an exit drill out of the house. I mean, he was conditioning me from a young age to be able to get up and be involved with this. When I was 10 years old, I was the one who was taking volunteers around the ladder truck and showing them where all the tools were on the truck. I mean, I grew up in this life. So for me, it took a long time for me to be able to rationalize with other people, like, you didn't grow up the same way that I did. You didn't have an old man who was, on your first job screaming at you while you're holding the irons trying to force the door, calling you everything, including your mother's son and not his, uh, because that's just how he was. Love and miss the old man, but that's how I grew up, and I had to take a step back and be reminded that not everybody grew up the same way that I did, and you have to slowly step down, break it apart, break it down to its fundamental points, and understand that this is firefighting is 1,000 very simple tasks put together in the most dynamic and dangerous environment that can be imagined. And
Yep.
I need you to be able to reach into this grab bag and pull one random skill out at any given moment in time. And as soon as you're done with that one, guess what? You're getting ready to grab a handful of new skills that you need to go out and you need to go do right now. And so many people forget because when you become immersed in this job, it is just so easy for you to fall into it because it's just you've had days, years, months, decades of just repetitions to the point where all of it just runs together and it becomes super simple. And you forget that when you wore the orange shirt or the blue shirt in your organization, it, you were a fucking idiot too.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how many times I have to have talks with instructors that they sit here and talk about these recruits, and these recruits suck, and these probies suck. They didn't learn anything in recruit school. Because I remember you when you came out on the floor, you didn't know anything. You knew as much then as these guys know right now. You just have time and experience to be able to take all those lessons that we beat into you in recruit school and distill it down to what you actually need to be able to do. I mean, I feel sorry for these kids because they're drinking through a fire hose. They're getting 900 plus hours of instruction over a period of like 26 weeks. And it is just a constant barrage of information that, again, it's 1,000 simple skills done in the worst environments imaginable that you need to be able to grab at a moment's notice, whether it's at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're working on absolutely no sleep because you've had your balls handed to you, or you literally just walked into shift and you've had a great night's sleep and you have a full stomach. Doesn't matter. Meemaw doesn't care. She just needs somebody to come solve her problems.
That's it. That is it. So, what kind of students are you looking for? What kind of student, with you being an instructor, what student makes you spark up and want to give your all? I mean, we try to give everything we can to everyone, but you get that one or two, and it's like, here we go, and you get wound up.
You know, I can sit here and tell you the easy one that everyone likes hitters. Everybody likes that person who just shows up and everything just clicks for them. But you know what? I don't care if you're strong. I don't care if you're smart. I don't care if you were the star of the track team. I don't care if you were the captain of the football team. I don't care if you're a brain surgeon. At the end of the day, I just care that you have an open mind and an open heart. Sure, I don't care if you break my balls as the instructor, because trust me, I'm going to be breaking your balls for the next 26 weeks. I don't care if you have fun. I don't care if you talk shit, but I want a person who is good in their heart and a person who just wants to be better. That is their one thing, is they want to serve a purpose higher than themselves, that they want to be the best version of themselves that they can be. The rest of that stuff, being good at skills, understanding all of the breadth of knowledge, which you can never master the breadth of knowledge that is the fire service, but as much of it as you possibly can. All that stuff's going to come with time, energy, and repetition. But I will say this: a battalion chief who at times I might have found myself at odds with has a statement that I think is phenomenal, and that's, I can make any idiot a decent fireman, but I can't make a shitty person into a decent human being.
I like that.
And with that, uh, that ultimately boils down to more or less how I feel about people. I've had some people who were very difficult students, fantastic individuals in their heart, and we had a long journey to get them certified as firefighters. And now they're finally starting to step up in their respective organizations they've moved on to, and they've become mentors. But when they went through recruit school, I mean, I'm having to explain how percentages work to people. I'm having to explain, like how LELs and UELs work. And when this guy in particular that I'm speaking about, fantastic dude, but he was a difficult student. He couldn't understand or rationalize LELs, UELs, and flammable range. And so I said to him, "What's something give me something that you like?" He's like, "Well, I like working on cars and I like working on car engines." It's like, that's great. I can work with that right there. So we're sitting here and we're talking about how you're trying to tune up an engine, and you want to make sure that you're getting the right amount of fuel into the engine so that way you can actually go through the combustion process. Well, what happens if you put too much fuel in there? You put too much fuel in there, you've gone above the ability for that piston to actually fire. So you're in your UEL. You've gone above your upper explosive limit. What happens if you're not putting enough fuel into that piston, and it's not going to spark, and it's not going to wind up causing that piston to turn? Well, you're below your LEL. You're too lean. So what you're trying to do, right, is you're trying to get that perfect amount of fuel that winds up in that piston so that way you can have the combustion process occur. That is how LELs, UELs, and flammable range works. You want to be in that flammable range. And from that stuck with that dude through the remainder of recruit school. It's finding bridges, it's finding ways that different students learn, because every student has different needs. And if you can identify what that student needs, you can take them to the ends of the earth as far as training goes. Now, what happens when they wind up in the real world? I can't do much with that. I've had some fantastic students who have, for all intents and purposes, they were going to be great firefighters. And as soon as they get out into the real world, like, they were garbage, but they were great students. I think they might have been thrust into the wrong environment. I think that they might have been paired with the wrong crew, that where their needs weren't actually developed. But at the time, that stuff was above my pay grade. The only thing I can do is try and give you a halfway decent product, and what you guys do with it, the rest of that is up to you.
Yep.
Not that I'm trying to wash my hands of it, but when I was just a lieutenant, guess what? Lieutenant only has to say the lieutenant has.
I like what you were talking about, because all of us have the students that are the rock stars. They'll show up and it's just, you know, I don't care how fast. I mean, I do care how fast you can force a door, but I don't care how good you are forcing a door. I don't care how good you are doing this. And if you do it fantastic all the time, that's not what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for the guy that will always remember that you never walk past a kink and fix that kinked hose and do the small simple things that, believe it or not, make a big difference in what we do. But he remembers that instead of worrying about how good he looks when he's doing this or that on the drill yard. And we see it a lot. You got guys that are, they're really good at one skill, and they flex that skill. Especially when you're dealing with a lot of recruits and people doing stuff. And but that one guy that just never walks by a kink and makes sure, he might take an extra 2 steps to do it, but he does it the right way, and he's that sponge. And it's like you say, they might not get everything 100% all the time, but he'll give you 95%, 100% of the time instead of 100%, 50% of the time. He's never lazy. He's always trying to work. He's trying to find the right thing to do. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody I can mold. I don't need a rock star already on the training ground because they're already going to get in the mindset of they know what they're doing. They're not going to listen to me. I'm not saying I know everything, but I want somebody that I can mold and make a difference into. And a lot of, I say it a lot of times in class I'm teaching is a fire instructor's an artist. And a lot of people don't look at it that way. And one of the students the other day said, "Well, what do you mean you're an artist? What's your medium?" I said, "I mold people because you know I take a guy that's never done anything besides work at a fast food place in high school, graduates, whatever, and then I help mold him into a fireman. I didn't do the work; he had to do the work to get there. But I helped him. I helped mold him. I laid the foundation down for him, and that's how we got to look at things. Every person that we're working with is moldable, palpable. And if they're not, sometimes they need to be humbled down to where you can remold them again."
I'm not gonna lie, that's powerful. That you are an artist and your medium is the people with which you work. That you might want to write that down
Hang on.
because I know I'm gonna write that down. We can make T-shirts with that.
Yeah. Hey, hats. Yeah. No.
Oh yeah, hats.
Yeah. 41 minutes in. That's where we're looking at. So, in talking about this, we were talking about the academies, and this will roll right into it. We talk about the challenges instructors face while trying to run an academy, because that's a beast of its own. I mean, what kind of advice and encouragement can you give everybody that's listening to us? That's working every day on the service. Because everybody is teaching, everybody's got it where they can learn. Because I'll say it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. You know, I get them started. The company officer and the senior man inside the firehouse is the true trainers of the fire service. We go in, we give them the basic foundations to get started to learn the rest of their career. The amount of time we have them and the amount of skills we have to run them through and everything else, let's be real. They are getting limited reps. They're never getting the reps we would want them to get. I mean, if I would love to be able to spend days after days after days with each separate rep we've got to try to make them be the best they can be when they come out. We try with the little bit of time we do have, but we've got time restraints. We've got budgets they're worried about. We've got a certain amount of time to get so much stuff delivered. And we try to do the best we can to get them in the street so that other guys can take them up and they can start their education for the rest of their career, because they're never going to stop learning. We just try to give them a good foundation to get started with, because just as good as I do, the textbook ain't the way it's in the street. I mean, it gives them the basic fundamentals to learn to go how to go do it out when they leave the fence. But what kind of encouragement, because yeah, guys, as good as anybody and everybody listening, training officers, do we get beat down on a daily basis? I mean, and
Oh,
it's talking about students with testing anxiety. They have no clue, nowhere near the anxiety the instructor has when he's got 20, 25 people. We just ended up having over 40 in each class, and those guys are sitting there taking a test. You're constantly in the back of your mind. Was I good enough? Did I measure up? Did I give them what they needed? And we're on pins and needles more than they are the whole time. But what kind of encouragement? Because, you're at a different caliber than I am. I'm just a training officer. You run the training department.
well, so we'll break it down in a couple different ways. First off, I don't necessarily agree with you there. I'm in a different position than you. I wouldn't say that I'm at a different caliber than you. I just approach things differently.
White helmet, white
Yes,
helmet, white helmet.
it, regardless, I don't look at that as a different caliber. I look at it as a different responsibility. Remember, we're all equals as men.
Yeah.
The second thing is that I'm over here laughing because I don't know how many times I've had this conversation, especially with Jackie. We don't have enough hours in the day. I can remember when they were telling me that I needed to cut weeks and months out of recruit class, and we were putting out some of the good people that were trained to the best of our abilities for the time that we had, but they were unfinished products. And even what
Yes,
we're putting out today is an unfinished product, even though we have
absolutely.
put more time back into it. We cannot put out a 100% competent career firefighter in a recruit class.
Mm.
It is impossible. Unless you want me to have them for 3 to 5 years where I can just sit here and drill this ad nauseum and I can basically go from a tiered approach, bringing them up through to where they are actually going from being completely in the training environment to actually working on the street, never going to happen. And even then, I would still find some way to screw that process up. Understand that what you're facing in your organization, what I'm facing in my organization, every training officer across the country is saying the same thing.
Oh
There
yeah.
is not enough hours in the day. There's not enough time that we're being given, and we could always use more. We're doing the best that we can with what we have, and we're always facing ridicule. Now, words of encouragement. This is going to sound like it is not words of encouragement. I promise you that. I sat down and when I was making my notes about this, I thought about it very carefully. Understand that you will stumble and you will fail. You'll have days where you walk away from this job utterly defeated, where you want to quit, you want to give it up. It happens to all of us, and it happens to me. I mean, a couple months ago, I was over the moon because I thought that my organization, well, we were the closest to being fully staffed under our current company model that we had ever been. And I was excited that we were finally going to wind up reaching a potential where we were going to be fully staffed by the end of the next recruit class. Now, here a few months later, like 4 months later, I'm almost 12 guys short. I've lost 8 guys in 4 months. And I was proud of what we were doing at the end of the last recruit class. But because life has changed for so many different individuals, different opportunities came up, whether it was in the fire service, out the fire service, guys have left our organization. I'm hoping and begging that it wasn't because of the leadership in our organization, because we've been trying to make strides over the past couple of years to bring our organization to where it needs to be. But even then, 4 months ago, I was singing the praises of how close we were and how we had a list of employees waiting to come in the door, and now we're back to the point where we're struggling to try and fill out this next class. All that's made me feel like a fraud, like all the changes that I've pushed for in this organization are for nothing because people just won't stay. It's part of life, man. We will fail. I will fail. We will continue to overestimate ourselves. I will overestimate myself. We'll say things that we feel like in our hearts to be true, but they don't actually reflect the reality of the situation. What you have to do is you have to just understand that tomorrow's a new day. Admit the mistakes that you've made. Admit that you overestimated yourself. Take better account of your actions. Take better account of your feelings. Seek more information. Try and better understand the situation and drive on. Embrace the embarrassment because it will humble you. Embrace the failure because it will humble you. And when you are humbled, when you reach a sense of humility, it will make you a better you inside of your organization, inside of your peers, inside of God above, and the world around you. You know, humility is the cornerstone to being an effective instructor and an effective leader in the fire service.
Hang on, just a second. Hang on. Here we go. Hang on. Had to get the whole crowd to applaud on that one because that was that was not here. Hang on, we're gonna do it again because that's real. That's not putting that's not putting a piece of candy on top of something, making it sound sweet, whatever. That's real. That's what we need to hear. Don't give up. You're going to get knocked down, and it's kind of like Jeremy Dodge says it all the time. He said, you know, everybody's wide open and strong until they get kicked in the teeth, and then see who can stand back up after they get kicked in the teeth. And we get kicked in the teeth a lot, but look at what our end product is. We get to watch those people walk across the stage. We get to watch them get a badge pinned on them. Know that we had a part to help do that. And, we didn't do it. We just helped facilitate it. We helped them build the bridge to walk across for the rest of their career. Um, is I guess the biggest thing is it's so good to have higher ranking officers. I'm not going to say, but higher ranking officers that truly have your back, that truly do inspire you. Because as me being a captain, I am constantly looking to be mentored by somebody. I'm constantly looking for a way for me to be better, to do my job better, to be able to give a better product to my students. Because that's what my students deserve. That's what the citizens deserve. They deserve me to help make them be the best. And that's what the guys in the street deserve. Whenever they get a probie out there, they deserve the best I can deliver for them. And it's, it's good to hear that people in higher administrative staffs are thinking that way too and looking at trying to, make things better, because everybody across the country is dealing with exactly what you deal with. I mean, nobody's the loyalty staying in the fire service in one place is not what it used to be. People are, you know, a buddy of mine is a fire chief. He said, if I can get somebody to stay 5 years, that's a big time win. He said most of the time the average is 3 years, and if I can get that, I feel like I've accomplished something. It's like those people staying long term. Long term is, I don't know. I don't know if they're looking for culture, environment, calls, money. I mean, it's I've been at the same place for 30 years. And I mean, do I agree with everything that's here? No. Do I like everything? No. But I embrace my department because if I leave, what part of it's going to get any better? We have to be there to help facilitate the change if we want things to be better.
But we live in a society of instant gratification. With living in a society of instant gratification, it's easy for us to go online, especially, with social media and everything, and we can find organizations that we feel, at least from an outward appearance, better reflect the values that we have in the service as a whole. Which is part of the reason why I've taken my approach that I have with, backwards hats. And I don't care if my guys are PTing, if they're wearing cutoff shirts, if they're wearing shirts at all. I care that they're PTing more than them being about in the appropriate uniform. That's why I don't care if they're wearing Crocs around the station. I don't care about how they look. We have to adapt as leaders and mentors in the fire service to the incoming generation. The fact of the matter is that you're right. If I can get somebody to stay here for 3 years, that is a win in and of itself. I have guys who come through recruit school, and 6 months later, they're gone to another fire department in another state. With us, it's a lot of guys coming out of the military that they'll basically come in, use their GI Bill benefits, get paid for school, get all the training that they need, and then they'll go back home because we're super close to Hunter Army Airfield, Fort Stewart, and Paris Island are all within an hour ride of where my municipality is. So that's the part of the beast or the nature of the beast for us in where we work. At the end of the day, I can sit here and I can choose to be upset about it, or I can just roll with the punches and move on. Because guess what? Me getting my feelings hurt that somebody's leaving, that's not going to change the fact that they're gone. I can sit here and I can be upset about it. I can be mad at them, whatever. That it impacts me more than it impacts them because they're just trying to be home closer to their families or where the next place is going to be that's going to be better for them or at the organization down the street. So, at the end of the day, man, the job's changing, the landscape's changed completely from when you and I came on the job. I've worked for three separate organizations full time in my career. So I've worked for three organizations 4 times. I'm on my second tenure of employment with the city of Pooler. Um, Different story for a different day, uh, money and everything. But I'm happy where I'm at. I've been here for now almost 7 years in a row. I have no intentions of leaving at this point. If I were to leave, it's probably because the city said that it was time for me to go. Um, be that what it may. So I feel your pain, but at the end of the day, that's the landscape of the world that we live in. We can choose to be mad about it, or we can just embrace it and roll on.
Kind of like what Chief Rhodes was talking about a while back, and on one of his discussions, he said, the biggest thing going around now is people are saying they're looking for an experience,
You're
and
right.
and I think that's what a lot of it is like when and me, I started in the volunteer ranks with the same department I'm working for now, and I was looking for a career. I mean, I was already a volunteer fireman, but I was like, I want that career spot, and waited a long time for that career spot to come open, and it's the days of a hundred people applying for 10 jobs are over. I mean, anybody I talk to is people aren't applying like they used to. I mean, so I want to build a training division that gets the recognition of, or not the recognition, but the reputation of. You know, these guys will not give up on you. They'll do whatever they've got to do to try to make you the best you can be. If you don't make it, it's because you made a decision not to make it. It's not because the staff gave up on you. That's what I want. I mean, because nobody ever gave up on me, and I was not the best. I'll be the first one, but I had a lot of good mentors, and nobody that would give up on me. I just want to return the favor.
Absolutely. I want to pour into people in the same way that people have poured into me.
Yeah. So, how big of a role do you think the instructors play in being a mentor? Because me personally, I when we get those recruits, I think mentoring starts on day one. And you said, earlier, I don't care if you, I don't care if my guys are wearing Crocs. I don't care if they're working out in cut off shirts. It is what it is. Different strokes, different folks. We got some people that think everything in the world needs to be shiny shoes and a badge. I believe that there's a time to look presentable and there's a time to be comfortable. Um, it doesn't do me any good to wear my white button up shirt if I'm outside doing drills because it ain't gonna be white long. Um, but you know, I think mentoring starts on day one, and it never stops. It might be a different mentor, one way, shape, or form, but you know, instructors a lot of times we need to embrace being that mentor as well as that instructor. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%.
Because we got them a long time before they hit the street and get under somebody else's wing.
No, you're absolutely right. To me, mentors are everything in this job. If you do not have a good mentor when you come into the fire service, whether it's your first instructor or when you get out of recruit school, your first time on the floor, yeah, that can truly make or break your success in this profession. So my advice to the young guys and my advice to even the instructors who might be listening to this, like you need to think of it from this perspective. If you do not have someone to show you the way, you are going to be left to your own devices. And when you are left to your own devices, you have a very good chance of becoming nothing more than just a fire department employee at best. I mean, don't get me wrong, you might wind up becoming a phenomenal fireman, but you're going to have to put in the work in order to get there. And that's going to require you to find the right people to associate yourself with, whether it's inside your organization or out. And, for young firemen, if you don't have a mentor, go find one. You can get on social media and you can find a lot of people to start the mentoring process. You can find phenomenal instructors that are out there to look up to. You may not be able to get a hold of your Chief Kyle Ramagis's, but you know what you can do is you can find some people who follow him that are going to be somewhere near your vicinity and start talking with them. You can find mentorship because there's going to be people around you. You know, not everybody can go play for the FDNY or Savannah or Cincinnati or Baltimore. There are phenomenal firemen in small towns all over the country. And guess what? You might not have that mentor in your department because that organization's culture isn't necessarily what you want it to be, but you might be able to find it in the next town over, two towns over. You can find it somewhere near you. I've had some phenomenal mentors in my life, and they've not all been guys that I worked with. In fact, one of my greatest mentors, Chief Mike Fronimos, the man who was basically the officiant at my father's funeral, he worked for a different organization than I did. We met on a fire call and we got involved with another organization outside of the two departments that we work for. That man has been one of my best friends for the past 15 years. Whether it was guys like Tim Monahan, who, may he rest in peace, he died from occupational cancer. My old man, um, Chris Gilpin, like I talked about earlier before, Chief Trent Eichman, who was the training chief at Pooler Fire before I was the training chief. The man was like basically a second dad. I lived with him for 6 months when I came back to Pooler. Chief Eric Campbell, who was my senior man when I was a 23-year-old company officer and I beat him out in the lieutenant's exam. He chose to take me under his wing and make me into the officer that I needed to be. I love that dude to death. Whether it's now Lieutenant Jason Wallace, that man was a mentor to me in multiple ways because he was one of my senior men who physically and emotionally abused me every day at work. And then when we were off work, he was past District Deputy Grand Master of the 18th Masonic District in Kentucky. So he physically abused me at work, and then he brought me up when we were off company time. Guys like Kyle Romagis, Todd Edwards, brother Andy Plofkin, all these men who I've had the great fortune to surround myself with and to learn from. all those people who poured into me are what made me the man that I am today and made me as successful as I am today. So anybody can go out and can build the network and the relationships to find the mentorship to turn them into the next, brother Uncle Wayne or the next Ian Schulte. Realistically, who you surround yourself with is essential to your success. You're either going to surround yourself with millionaires or fucking crackheads. And at the end of the day, I'd rather surround myself with millionaires.
There you go. You're a product of your environment. I mean, and just like you're saying,
100%.
you know, get out. If you got, I mean, get out. You can get online. Somebody's got a conference or a micro conference or some kind of training weekend every weekend all over the country. That's where I met Ian. Went in Atlanta, sat down, went to go have a beer at a fool's bash, met a guy, got a lasting friendship building right now. I mean, so you talked earlier, the fire service, we talk about the history of it and everything else. Strong, strong history of brotherhood in the fire service. You're also another organization that's got tons of strong history and brotherhood. You even started a social media page on it. So why don't you tell us about the traveling firefighter, which
So,
my patch is already sewed on the coat. So
hey, I'm here for it. So, the Traveling Fireman is a page that I started to help connect not only firefighters who are brother Masons, but also to just kind of put some of the information out there to some people who might have interest in learning a little bit about the fire service and maybe even just a little bit about Freemasonry and how actually intertwined the two professions or the two vocations, if you will, could be. And in there, I try and talk about the lessons of leadership and life that I've learned through my time in the Masonic institution because legitimately the fraternity is what helped shape and guide the way that I approach life and life's problems. And I hope that you as a brother can see that at least from the way that I talk, that I really have tried to apply those lessons from the 3 or up to 32nd degrees to my life. I will say that anytime that I discuss the working tools, the life lessons, and any of the things that I talk about is public knowledge, I will not discuss any of the modes of recognition or anything like that by which we the actual stuff that we keep secret. So anything that I say, anything that I type is something that I have heard in public exchange, in installations, in front of families, friends of Master Masons. This is to help kind of blend, the two things that honestly I joined the fire department because it was a recommendation from a friend. Like, go find something else to do. You love being a fireman. You are a fireman 100% of the time. You cannot be 100% fireman 100% of the time. You need to be involved in something else. And guys like past District Deputy Grandmaster Wallace, guys like Rodney Dykus that I worked with, um, Coy Lunsford, all these wonderful brothers from back home, they all had this air about them that they just handled things differently. Sure, they each had their unique quirks, they had their unique imperfections, as we all have, but at the end of the day, they all stood for something greater. And I wanted to know what that was. And so I got involved with the institution, and with that, it really helped me gain traction as a young company officer, and it's really helped lead to my success. So my goal with the traveling fireman was to try and get brother master masons together on the same page and to kind of open a discussion and a dialogue about how the fraternity has helped them. Again, we can't solicit for membership, but at the end of the day, if you post something that resonates with someone to the point where they ask you the question, we've done something to help make our fraternity stronger. And at the end of the day, I'll sit here and say this to anyone: believe what you will about our fraternity. Nothing that this fraternity will teach you will conflict with the duties that you owe to God, your country, and your family. And with that being said, believe what you will about it. If you have any questions about it, you can always reach out to me. I'm more than happy to discuss it and the wonderful things the fraternity has done for me and what the wonderful things this fraternity has done for even our profession, which I think we'll talk a little bit more on later. But at the end of the day, man, that's the origin of the traveling fireman. And just to let you know, and any other brother who may listen to this, everything on that page, it is open for anyone to post on, but I have to approve any one of the posts. So there's a lot of spam posts that go through there that I deny. I do that so that way I can make sure that I'm checking all the posts to make sure that you're not putting out any information that shouldn't be put out. from a Masonic perspective. And also, you're not filling my page full of things that we don't want to see on there. I don't care about you trying to sell your fire helmets. You can do it on somebody else's page, not mine. But I really encourage Brother Master Masons to go out there and talk about their story. Share pictures of when you meet the other brethren. Share pictures of the patches that I had made, because I absolutely love it. This is not about me. This was never meant to be about me. This was meant to be about us and our wonderful institution.
I like it. I like it a lot. So, Ian, chalkboard's yours. What do you want to write on it for everybody to see?
So, if I were to read off, let's see, 5 names to you: George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, Paul Revere, and John Barry. What do those names mean to you?
Founding fathers of the country and all brothers.
They were all founding fathers. They were all brother master masons, but what else were they?
Educate me.
They were all actively involved in the fire protection of their communities.
Okay.
George Washington was a member of the Alexandria Fire Company. Benjamin Franklin is the one who's accredited with starting, the first organized volunteer fire company, which, by the way, is set up strikingly similar. That organization was set up strikingly similar to the rest of ours. John Hancock, Paul Revere, and John Barry were all part of the fire wardens, and the fire wardens were essentially fire captains in their communities. They were the people who would go out and perform inspections. They would manage the fire companies. They would rouse the volunteers. They were all actively involved in the protection of the community. And back in those particular times, civic duty was essential. And how people wound up coming into areas of political prominence was, one, through their military service, two, through the institutions by which they belonged, and three, what they poured into the world. And all 5 of those men were involved in the fire service. They were all pillars of their community in the Masonic institutions in which they belonged to, and they were all attributed to taking the principles that our dearest fraternity believes in and applying it to the United States as we know it today, or as some of us would call it, the Great Masonic Experiment. So that's what I have to add for the chalkboard right there.
All right. I like it. I never knew that. Honestly, I never knew Washington and then we're in. I mean, I always knew Franklin, because that's what we most of the time learn throughout history. So, I mean, I've learned a little bit more. I appreciate that. Um, that's like I'm gonna have to go do some reading tonight. That's gonna make me dig into the history books a little bit.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, when I did the research, so that's actually part of a lecture that I built for Lodge, but I built it from the perspective of, we know that these guys were all Masons, but did you know that they were also involved in the fire service? And I will say that Commodore John Barry, I think that he was not, I don't think that he wound up ever being like Master of the Lodge or anything like that, but he was known to be a Mason. And there's a good handful of other prominent figures from that age, but not necessarily could verify 100% their membership and association in all 3 of those particular things. So that's just from a place of transparency for if you're going to wind up doing a little bit more research.
Okay, I like it. Well, Ian, I mean, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me, man. You have no idea how much I appreciate it, and you don't have any. I mean, I enjoyed it. I got a ton of notes right here, and we'll have to go back and clip out some video feeds on these right here because they're really good. Um, Everybody, thank you so much for listening to this. It wouldn't be possible without your support. Everybody, stay safe. Remember to keep learning the craft. And we'll see you next time when we get our next guest here so they can step up to the chalkboard.